I want to tell you something that I've never said on the podcast before. A few years back, I was coaching one of my teams, and right before the game, cleats on, nerves in the air, kids looking up at me like I was supposed to have all the answers. And I said something I hadn't planned, but something just came out. I told them full speed, no fear, and most importantly, have fun. That's it. That was the whole speech. I sent the players out on the field, and here's what I've been thinking about ever since. Those 9 words, they just didn't apply to the game. They apply to every business I've ever built, every team I've ever led, and every hard decision I've ever had to make. Today, I'm going to unpack them for you, word for word, because I believe there's a complete leadership philosophy hiding in that pregame speech. And it's the one that can change the way you run your business, build your team, and show up in your life. Welcome to Mind Your Business, and I'm your host, Steve Wagoner. Let me set the scene for you, because context matters. These were young players. Some of them had never played a full season. Some were smaller than the kids on the other side of the field. Some were still figuring out the rules of the game, let alone how to win it. On paper, in a lot of ways, we were outmatched. And I could have stood there and given them a speech about technique, about assignments, about the other team's weaknesses. But here's what I've learned about sports and business. The most complicated strategy in the world falls apart if the people executing it are hesitating, if they're second guessing, if they're scared, and if they've already decided they can't win before the whistle blows. So I didn't give them a strategy speech. I gave them a mindset speech because I knew if I could get their minds right, the rest would follow. And that, my friends, is exactly true in business. You can have the best business plan ever written, and it could collect dust if the person executing it doesn't believe. So let's talk about what it means really believe, starting with full speed. Here's something I've learned on the sidelines that I wish somebody had told me 35 years ago about business. Speed covers a lot of ground. On the playing field, when a player goes full speed, I mean truly full speed, every step, every rep, every play, something remarkable happens. Gaps in talent start to close. Gaps in experience start to close. The kid who doesn't have the most natural ability, but who is running at full effort, he makes plays. He forces mistakes. He creates opportunities that our more talented players who are coasting will never see. I have watched less experienced players beat more talented ones simply because they refused to go half speed, because they brought everything they had to every moment. Because effort, unlike talent, is a choice. Now, let me repeat that. Effort, unlike talent, is a choice. You cannot always control how talented you are, but you can control how hard you go. Now, bring that to your business. Maybe you're not the most experienced person in the industry. Maybe you don't have the biggest team, the biggest budget, the most brand recognition. Maybe you're looking at competitors who've been doing this longer than you. And you're thinking, how do I even compete? And here's your answer. Full speed. The competitor who responds to every client faster, follows up more consistently, shows up more prepared, and execute more urgently, wins deals that have no business winning. I've seen it and I've lived it. Full speed in business doesn't mean frantic, doesn't mean chaotic. It means total commitment. It means when you say you're going to do something, you do it full effort, not 70%. It means you don't coast between opportunities. It means you treat every client, every proposal, every job like it's the most important game on the schedule. And here's the thing about full speed. It is a great equalizer for lack of experience. You know what young teams have that veteran teams sometimes lose, and that's hunger, energy, the willingness to run through a wall because they don't know that they're supposed to be tired. If you are early in your business journey, this is not a disadvantage. This hunger you feel, that's your full speed. Don't apologize for it, weaponize it. So ask yourself, where am I coasting? Where have I let the routine become more comfortable? Where have I dialed back to 70% and told myself, that's enough? Because the game is won at full speed every time. Now, let's talk about no fear. I need to tell you where this came from for me, because when I said no fear to those kids, I wasn't just reaching for a sports cliche. I was drawing for something I carried my entire life, something that has anchored me in every moment I wanted to quit. Every moment the deal fell apart. Every moment the numbers didn't add up. Every moment I questioned whether I was the right person for the job. And it comes from the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. And it says, strong and courageous, do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. That's it. That's where no fear lives for me. Not in bravado, not in arrogance, not in pretending the risk isn't real or the stakes don't matter. It lives in the assurance that I am not alone on the field. Now think about what Joshua was facing when he received those words. He had just been handed the leadership of the entire nation after Moses had died. He was being asked to lead people into territory they had never conquered against an opposition that was real and formidable. He had every human reason to be terrified. And what does God say to him? He didn't say, don't worry, it'll be easy, or the other side won't be that strong. He says, be strong and courageous because I will be with you. That's the most powerful source of no fear I know. Not absence of difficulty, not the guarantee of easy, the presence of God in the difficulty. No fear doesn't mean nothing is scary. It means that you know who is with you when it is. Now let's bring this into the room where you make your business decisions, because fear shows up everywhere in business. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of slow month, fear of making the wrong hire, fear of raising prices, fear of starting, fear of stopping, fear of what people will think. And here's what I found. Most of that fear is a liar. Most of it is in your brain catastrophizing a future that hasn't happened. But even the fear that is attached to something real, a genuine risk, a genuine uncertainty, even that fear does not have to be the one making your decisions. When I walked into that locker room and told those kids no fear, I wasn't telling them the other team wasn't bigger or faster. Some of them were. I was telling them, you don't face this field alone. You face it together. And for me personally, you face it with a God who promised you to be with you wherever you go. That promise doesn't expire in the locker room door. It goes with you into the boardroom, into negotiations, into the conversation you've been dreading, into the risk you've been avoiding. Be strong, be courageous, but do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. That is the operating system. That is what no fear means. And now we get to the one I specifically called the most important, and that's have fun. I know coming right after a scripture passage, have fun sounds like a gear shift. But stay with me, because I think those two things, faith and joy, are far more connected than we usually admit. Because without it, the other two collapse. You can will yourself to full speed for a while on discipline alone, but discipline without joy is grinding, and grinding has a ceiling. And at some point, the body quits and the heart no longer loves. You can push through fear with sheer determination for a season, but courage without joy becomes grimness. And grim leaders create grim cultures. And grim cultures lose people. Joy is the fuel that makes full speed and no fear sustainable. It's not soft, it's structural. I told those kids to have fun because I knew something about competition that took me years to learn. The team that plays loose wins. The team that plays tight loses. And when athletes are having fun, when they're playing free, playing light, playing like they love the game, they perform at a higher level. They take better risks. They communicate better. They recover faster from mistakes. They stay in the moment. The same is true as in business. It's been in rooms of companies that are technically excellent, but joyless. And they were hemorrhaging the best people. I've been in rooms with companies that had probably had no business competing at the level, but there was something alive in there, something that made people want to stay, want to grind, want to build. And here's the faith connection I promised you. Scripture tells us that the joy of the Lord is our strength, not our own manufactured positivity, not toxic optimism that pretends everything is fine. A deep, settled joy that comes from knowing you aren't held, knowing your work matters, knowing the outcome ultimately is in the hands bigger than yours. That kind of joy doesn't crumble when the quarter is bad. It doesn't disappear when a client walks. It doesn't evaporate when the deal falls through. It's rooted in something deeper than the scoreboard. So let me ask you something direct. Are you having fun in your business? Now, I'm not talking every day. I'm not asking for a fairy tale, but in balance, in the arc, Do you still love the game you're in? Do you still feel something when you deliver great work? Do you still get excited when you see the opportunity ahead? If the answer is yes, protect that. Guard it like the asset it is. Because a lot of people build success and lose joy on the way. Don't be that story. If the answer is no, or I'm not sure, that is worth your full attention. Don't panic, just your attention, because somewhere along the way, something's shifted, and you have the ability to find it and shift it back. Have fun is not a throwaway line at the end of the speech. It's the most important instruction because it is what makes the whole thing worth running. Now let's bring this all together. I said 9 words to a group of young players before a game. I didn't know at the time that I was giving business philosophy. I just knew what they needed to hear, and what they needed to hear was truth. Full speed is the truth that effort is a choice, and that on the field and in the market, it covers more ground than talent alone ever could. You don't need to be the biggest or the most experienced. You just need to be the most all in. No fear is the truth that courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move anyways. And for me, it's grounded in a promise that has never failed me, that God is with you wherever you go. Be strong, be courageous, but do not be terrified or discouraged. Have fun. It's a truth that joy is not a luxury. It's the engine. It's the fuel. It's the thing that makes full speed and no fear sustainable over a long haul. And it's most important. Now, here's your challenge coming out of today's episode. I want you to rate yourself honestly right now on each of these 3. First, am I going full speed, or am I holding back, waiting for better conditions that may never come? Second, am I operating in fear? And if so, what is the truth I need to stand on instead? And finally, am I having fun? Do I still love this game? Write those answers down, be honest with yourself, and then identify one move, just one, that would raise your lowest score this week. That's the practice. That's the game. Thank you for spending your time with me on Mind Your Business. If this one meant something to you, pass it along. Send it to someone on your team. Send it to a fellow business owner. Send it to somebody who needs to hear those 9 words today. Subscribe and leave a review, and come back next week because we got more work to do. And until then, I'll leave you the way I left those kids in those locker rooms. Full speed, no fear, and most importantly, have fun. Now go play your game.